So check these out. These are different care guides from different pet store chains, and what we're going to be doing today is I actually have a whole bunch of different species care guides from each one of these different chains here, and we're going to be grading them. So stick around. My name is Nick Pulaski. Growing up, I have always had a passion for wildlife, and with that passion, along with my passion of filmmaking, I get taken on some amazing adventures creating wildlife content, getting up close with a variety of incredible animals. So come follow along as I pursue my goals of educating, inspiring, exploring, and conserving wildlife, all while having fun, seeing the beauty in our natural world. Hey, what is going on, everybody? Thank you guys so much for joining me here today. It truly means the world to me, and we have a fun video for you guys today, something a little bit different. And I've actually been thinking about doing this idea for a while now, and I finally got around to going to a few different pet store chains, some top chains here that we have. Let's see, for example, we have Pet Supplies Plus right here, we have Petsmart right here, and then we also have Petco over here. So my goal with this video isn't trying to bash big chain pet stores, not at all. What I'm basically trying to do is I just wanted to grade the quality of the care guides that they provide to each individual. Full disclosure too, when I was growing up, I actually used to work for a big pet store chain as well, doing animal care, stock, you name it, everything, cashier, I did it all. So that's something that I wanted to go over and let you guys know right off the bat. I'm not trying to bash any of the big name pet stores at all. I just wanted to do a compare and contrast and do a grading of what they provide in terms of their care guidelines in their care sheets. So that's what we're going to be doing today, and I think it'll be fun. I think it's something cool and exciting, and you know, a lot of people, honestly, a lot of people are not checking out like my videos or other people's videos when they go in to buy their first snake or something like that. And where do they commonly go? Normally these people don't even know about reptile shows existing, so they'll go to their local pet store. Maybe they have a dog or a cat or a bird, you name it, fish, and that's normally how it goes, is they'll have those animals and then they kind of get introduced to the reptile side of things because they see the reptile section, and then they're drawn to that, and they'll be like, oh my gosh, this is really cool. I've never seen a snake like that. I've never seen a gecko like that, you name it, you know? And it's something really exciting for them, and it piques their curiosity. So what do? They grab one of these, or they talk to the representative. Like with anything, the quality of your information that you receive may vary, and you may even be one of these representatives that's an employee for one of these big chains currently, and the people that you know could be like really knowing their stuff, and they're at the top of the charts, and they're going to go through the gauntlet to make sure that you get all the proper care that you need for your animal. Or they could just be trying to slide on by. It's just their 9 to 5. They're just trying to get by and own a paycheck, and it's just tough when you're working with animals and stuff like that. I mean, you can see how some of the quality, I've seen some of the quality of like really bad animal care goes at some of these places, and I've seen other places where it's thrived, and I mean, you really know that these people actually care about the animals truly. But yeah, like I said, not trying to bash these places. Moral of the story, the information will vary from place to place, person to person, and I just personally wanted to check these guys out. I haven't really read these myself yet and see how the information adds up and grade these guys on a personal chain level. So we're going to do that and see what we find. So we're going to compare each of these for each different species and go from there. So what do you say? Let's get to it. Alright, so the first care guide that we're going to be going over is for leopard geckos. So this one is for Pet Supplies Plus right here. So that's a local chain that's normally around the Midwest states. If you don't know it, or if you've never heard of it, that's where it's normally based. But we're going to be checking out leopard geckos right now as a species and kind of going over the care. So now I'm not going to be going over every single point in this video. I think that's going to kind of draw out because we do have a lot of species to go over, but I want to kind of hit on some key points as I'm reading this along, and we're going to see from there how this kind of adds up and graded from here. And then what it looks like is it gives a good summary for basics of needs and essentials that these guys would need. So an average size for a leopard gecko is 6 to 10 inches long. Normal behavior and interaction for a leopard gecko is very calm and curious, usually non-aggressive. They are nocturnal, which means they come out mostly at night and they're active. Housing adult geckos together will create stressful environment to the point of illness, therefore they should always be housed separately. Age and temperature, warm side 85 degrees, basking temps of 90, cool side about 75. So that's pretty cool, that works out pretty well. Humidity about 60 to 70% in levels. Go over supplements in here as well too, so dust with calcium supplement and vitamin supplements. As a rule, a growing juvenile's food should be dusted more often than in adults. Water, a large bowl of clean, fresh, chlorine-free water must always be available for these guys. Enclosure size leopard geckos should have a cool side and a warm side to allow for the body temperature for regulation. That's cool right off the bat reading that, because a lot of places normally I haven't seen talk about the regulation of body temperature. So telling that is a good thing to know, that your animal does need a gradient of heat. So that's pretty cool. So a 20-gallon long tank is ideal for hide houses on either side for your gecko. Enclosure must have a secure metal mesh screen lid as well too. So yeah, I mean 20 gallon long, I mean that would be basically the bare minimum. I know a lot of people have even said bigger for these guys, which I can also see justifiable, like a 40 gallon even per se. And honestly, I've also seen in certain stores too, is a lot of them are actually selling 60 gallon tanks. So they're aquariums, but they are actually very interesting because I've never seen that before. And basically what they are is they're the length, but not the height, like a 75 gallon. So I thought that was kind of interesting. So just something that I found interesting. I've never seen a 60 gallon before, but I thought it was very interesting and I wanted to share that with you guys. Definitely check that out. You would have to find a proper lid for it. Yeah, that's basically the highlights for that. Habitat maintenance. Daily maintenance should consist of spot cleaning and removing soiled substrate, cleaning water bowls thoroughly, and wiping the glass down. The entire tank should be cleaned thoroughly at least once every month. So yeah, I mean, as long as you're spot cleaning and stuff like that, you normally don't have to take out all the bedding for a reptile like this. And I mean, leopard geckos, they normally are like cats where they like to go in one specific spot. Like mine personally goes in one specific corner of the room, and he's totally fine. He sits in that one corner. I normally have to spot clean that, and then we're off to the races there. So then we have the recommended supplies on this side. So it says at least a bare minimum, oh, it goes over here, a bare minimum of 20 gallon. Shredded aspen or reptile carpeting for the bottom of the tank. And this is something I'm just going to take a pause on. I mean, I used to be a huge lover of the reptile carpet. And I mean, I've kind of strayed away from that stuff because it honestly is something that really boosts bacteria inside your enclosure, and it can cause issues for your animal. It looks super clean, it looks super nice. At the end of the day, it's just something that harbors bacteria, and it's not something that you can easily spot clean, though it may be looking like it's all gone. It's just something that doesn't clean as well as other types of substrates out there. So that's something that I'm personally not as much a fan of anymore as I used to be. Even in my pet store days, I used to recommend reptile carpet all the time, but now, I mean, I'm really not a fan of this stuff. I mean, even using it and stuff, I mean, I've kind of realized that this stuff isn't probably the cleanest stuff out there. So that's things that I've noticed and wanted to go over with you guys. Live or artificial branches or plants, reptile safe, of course it says here, and a humidity box with the terrarium moss for shedding time as well. So that's pretty cool. So it goes over live food as well too that they require. They have a shopping checklist too, which is pretty neat on here. So yeah, I mean, I think the Pet Supplies Plus one is a pretty solid one here. I don't want to give it a grade yet until I see the other two and kind of give it a comparison. But this one definitely checks out to be something pretty knowledgeable and up to par for leopard geckos here. So let's check out the PetSmart one now. Alright, so here we have the PetSmart one, so we're going to check this one out a little bit here. So, same thing, we have leopard gecko. So they have experience level of a beginner. So yeah, I mean, normally this is like the starter reptile for a lot of people. I definitely would agree that it is also a beginner type reptile for sure, based on the leopard gecko being such a docile animal and something super easy to manage and maintain for a lot of people. And then it kind of gives a cool little diagram here too to kind of further explain things, which I think is kind of neat for the care guide. So people that are more so like needing to see pictures and everything, that's pretty cool. And then it just kind of labels things from there. So that is pretty cool. And then they have like a target range for temperatures as well as humidity for day to night, everything. So I think that's pretty cool. You know, I mean, definitely something a little bit different from what we saw before. And it says on the other side, how do I set up a leopard gecko terrarium? So 1 to 2 leopard geckos can be housed together in a 20-gallon terrarium. If territorial behavior is observed, increase the size of the habitat. And I don't know, I think just that point alone, yes, you can successfully put 2 leopard geckos together. Should you? I don't think so. I personally don't think cohabitating these guys is the smartest move. A lot of people will do it with 2 females, and I mean, I've seen that kind of work as like a breeding trio. People will do that. That's fine. But in terms of like a pet ownership kind of thing, I don't know if recommending cohabitating anything is really the smartest idea. And my main reason would probably be for that. Say if you see blood in the terrarium and you're like, oh my gosh, what is going on here? And if you're not seeing any visual signs from either of them, how would you know which one is having a potential internal illness, you know? So it's very hard to depict those kind of things, and it's not something that I would say is ideal versus having 2 separate enclosures, plus the stress levels of the animals as well too. Like it says bump up the size of the enclosure, not remove the other animal from the enclosure. I think that's kind of funny. So I don't know, I'm not for cohabitating a lot of different species together. There are certain exceptions to the rules, but I don't know. In terms of leopard geckos, I'm not too fond of cohabitating these guys. Use reptile carpet or tile, remove droppings at least once every week, and thoroughly clean the reptile carpet or tile at least once every week. Leopard Gecko's calcium absorption can benefit from supplementary UVB lighting, so that's pretty cool that they go over that. Leopard Geckos require a temperature gradient for the warm side. Use an under tank heater and a daytime heat lamp. If necessary, turn the heater and the lamp off for 12 hours at night. Use the chart to opposite to ensure proper temperature. So this is a neat little section on the care guide that I kind of like. It says, what should I feed my leopard gecko? And it tells you 1 time daily to every other day. And then it tells you different insects that you can feed to these guys and how to supplement and how often to supplement as well too. So that's pretty interesting. Water cleaned daily and provided at all times. Now another interesting thing that I kind of like about this guide is it says, when should I contact a veterinarian? So it goes over different issues that a leopard gecko could have, so that's pretty cool. And then at the back here, it seems like obviously as you are at a pet store, it's going to go over a shopping checklist for things that you should buy at their stores. I mean, this is the Petsmart Leopard Gecko Care Guide, so kind of having a frame of reference between the two, I'm kind of forming ideas on how to grade these guys. But yeah, that would be what they recommend in terms of care at Petsmart for their leopard geckos. So now let's check out, last but not least, the Petco one. And they had to print me off one because they ran out at the store, so that is totally cool here. So we're going to check this out, and it does say on the front, leopard geckos are available in a variety of morphs, including leucistic, high yellow, and albino. Unlike other geckos, leopard geckos have movable eyelids. So cool little quick facts right off the get-go there. So we're going to check this page out and check out other guys here and see what it says. So using a leopard gecko, approximately sized habitat with a secure cover, a 10 to 20 gallon long tank is recommended for one leopard gecko. So yeah, I mean, I would definitely say more so a 20 long versus a 10 gallon is definitely more beneficial for these guys, especially when you want a gradient for these guys, for them to kind of determine where they want to be in terms of the heating gradient. If you want them on the basking side and everything, you can't really necessarily give them and provide a heating gradient with a 10 gallon tank. So another thing they're going over is habitat. So provide multiple hiding areas with non-toxic plants, branches, logs, and cork. Maintain humidity below 50%. So yeah, I mean, I definitely think you want these guys with a higher humidity level for their humid hides and everything. So definitely something that I would personally recommend. Use sandy chips, calci sand, or terrarium carpet. So again, we're going over the reptile carpet. A lot of these guys are going to be pushing for that. And the calci sand, I don't know, I've never been fond of using like the sand-like products for the reptiles, so it's not been my cup of tea to use those kind of guys. And with all the other different products on the market, like a forest blend or something, there's a lot of things that can hold better humidity and look a lot nicer too. Do not house 2 or more male leopard geckos together, and do not house different reptile species together. So that's kind of cool for in terms of the cohabiting. Like I said, 2 female leopard geckos will on average be fine. Now normally, like I said, if you're not a breeder whatsoever and you're just getting into leopard geckos and you're like, wow, I really want 2 leopard geckos, after you get the first one, you're like, maybe I want to take on a second. Maybe it's not the best thing to do to house those 2 together, because one, you probably don't know the sexes of both of them, and 2, it's just going to stress one of the other 2 out and could cause injuries and everything. So I would just say house both of your leopard geckos separately at the end of the day. So leopard geckos will eat their skin when they're shedding, so another cool fact there. That's true. That's how they get some calcium. Keep handling to a minimum, as their overhandling can cause stress to them. Never grab a leopard gecko by its tail, as their tail may drop. On reading all of these, that's actually the first time I think that I've read, unless if I'm overstepped it, where I've never seen people say don't pick up the gecko by its tail, otherwise it could drop its tail. So that's actually pretty cool that it says that. And this one also goes over things that you want to consult a vet for if you're seeing some sort of illnesses or anything like that. So that's pretty nice. And then on the back here, it also has a shopping checklist too. Alright, so we went over all the leopard gecko care guides, so we're going to grade these guys now. So we're going to start off with the Pet Supplies one. I would honestly say the Pet Supplies one definitely deserves a B+. I think this one was a pretty darn solid one. I think the only thing that this one didn't have that these guys did have that really stuck out to me was when to consult a vet. And if it did have this in here, I think this one would be a pretty well-rounded one. It also has some informational facts on here on where these guys come from, all the whole 9 yards. I think this one is pretty darn solid. So kudos to you, Pet Supplies. And we went over this one right here, and this one is the PetSmart one. So the PetSmart one was definitely informal. I do like the internal diagram right here. I definitely give it bonus points for that. But I definitely think it is lacking in certain things that you would basically want to know in terms of a well-rounded care guide, especially compared to the other care guides. So I think this one definitely still is a really solid care guide. I don't think there's a lot of misinformation in here. The big one that sticks out to me is is the not going too in depth, but saying that you can cohab two leopard geckos in here. That one really sticks out to me among talking about and boasting for like certain different substrates that maybe shouldn't be the best top options, that we should probably kind of steer away from. But I think as a whole, that's a practice that a lot of us need to kind of preach about. But regardless, I think that this one is a solid maybe C+ to a B-. So the Petsmart one, not too bad. And like I said, the things that really I like about this one are going to be the diagram in here. It's a pretty solid diagram, as well as letting you know about when to consult a veterinarian. Petco one, I definitely have a little bit more issues with. I think it kind of goes over information and is kind of more vague in this one, so I wasn't too ecstatic about it. So I would probably give this one probably maybe a C-. I'm not too fond also too that they recommend maybe like a smaller enclosure, that people would kind of assume once they hear like one thing, they're going to be like, oh well, if I need a 10-gallon, that's all I need for this animal. You know what I mean? So just kind of on that information unknown. I don't know if that's normally the best information we want to give here. We do go over cohabbing in here as well too, but it's not overall a terrible pet guide, but I would definitely grade this one probably as a C to a maybe C- as well. So sorry Petco, but yeah, that's kind of how I am kind of rolling with this. Is I think the vague information that's brought throughout here, though it does give some informal facts about the leopard gecko, I would probably grade it at probably about a C to a C-. So that's the leopard gecko. Let's do another species and see what we find there. Alright, so we're going to get into the care guide for the bearded dragon from Pet Supplies here. It's approximately 10 years of age, about 14 to 22 inches in length on average. Normal behavior and interaction between a bearded dragon. Very social and engaging. Males become territorial, and females may also have trouble getting along as well. The enclosure. The enclosure should be a solid glass-sided tank, long enough to create two separate temperature gradients with a solid escape-proof cover. And then this is an important one, Uvb Light. So bearded dragons must, and they have that bolded and they also have that underlined, be exposed to UVB lighting. So I can't stress that enough. I like that they stress this a lot because it's normally bearded dragons that you see a lot with metabolic bone disease, and it's something that is absolutely heartbreaking to see an animal suffer with. It definitely is something that it puts them in dire pain and they have to live with that. So definitely providing that UVB light is important. So supplementing them with UVB light 8 to 12 hours a day, this exposure is critical in allowing an animal to synthesize vitamin D3 and absorb calcium. So going over why UVB lighting is really important as well too. So I really like that they highlight that in here because, as you know, I mean, I've gone to reptile rescues. I've seen these reptiles at reptile shows that are needing rehoming, and they need some personal attention to them because they deal with that metabolic bone disease. And it's so heartbreaking, especially when you see it commonly with bearded dragons. When people get these guys, they don't provide that lighting, and these guys suffer at the end of the day for it. So kudos to Pet Supplies Plus for going over that. And on the back here, it also has the shopping checklist like always. So overall, I'm actually pretty pleased with the Pet Supplies Plus care guide for the bearded dragon. I think this one is really the top notch. I would probably really at this point probably potentially give it an A. I mean, I really think this is pretty well rounded to start someone off and really tell them what the needs are for a bearded dragon before even consulting an employee at the store. So kudos to you guys, Pet Supplies. I think this is pretty cool. So we're going to check out the other two right now and see how they add up. Alright, so the next one we're going to go over is for Petsmart right here. So getting to know your bearded dragon. So let's check this guy out right here. So we go in and totally a blank page. If you want to draw your bearded dragon, I guess you could do that right here. But we're going to go into the next page right here. Again, another diagram right here. Pretty neat. In PetSmart care guides, they do say the experience level, and they do say a bearded dragon is a beginner level with experience. And that is something right off the bat I don't necessarily agree with. I think that these guys are something probably to the intermediate level that I would recommend. I don't think every kid should be owning a bearded dragon. I think they make great pets. They're super docile and everything. But if you're getting into a bearded dragon as your first reptile, it's a big commitment. I mean, you really have to be showing some serious devotion, and parents being on board with it too. Now, mind you, I don't think necessarily there is ever a beginner starter up kind of pet. I don't think that necessarily exists unless if you say like maybe a pet rock, and if you show that you can take care of a pet rock for a while and really keep up consistency with it. But yeah, I mean, that's just my 2 cents with that. But I would definitely say the experience level is more of an intermediate. But the size of a bearded dragon can grow up to 2 feet. We also have the temperature gradients down here, similar to the ones that we saw in the other care guide as well. Reptiles require a 12-hour day-to-night cycle, a UVA/UVA bulb, will help your bearded dragon absorb calcium, add driftwood or rock to climb a little closer to the heat source, add a few branches for hiding and climbing. And then they also have the what should you feed your bearded dragon. So young bearded dragons are omnivorous, approximately 50% insects and 50% plant matter. As they mature, they will eat more vegetables and transition to mostly herbivores. And then they kind of go over the insects and gut load and all these other different things, as well as the vegetables, fruits, and prepared diets for them. And then they also have the when should you consult the veterinarian here. So overall, not too bad. So now what I'm trying to see here is, right here on the back, the shopping checklist. Okay, so it does say a 10 to 20 gallon terrarium or larger. Adults require at least 40 gallons. So yeah, I would definitely say 40 gallons is a really, really small pushing it thing for adults. I definitely think they require bigger space because they are something that branches out to be 2 feet long. And I definitely think these guys would require something that's a lot larger, and I think they would love that more. I mean, you're talking about an animal that grows up to 2 feet in length, so I don't know. I think we have to move away from the reptile carpet side of things and requiring such small enclosures for these guys. I think that would also kind of deter some people away that maybe don't realize how much they bit off when they got one of these animals. You know, they bit off more than they could chew. So I definitely say that that is something that we need to maybe strive to improve on these care guides. But overall, I think this wasn't a too bad of a care guide. I think definitely it is second runner to the Pet Supplies one so far. Obviously, we've only graded 2. But yeah, I definitely think this one isn't too bad of a care guide, that's for sure. Alright, so lastly we do have the Petco care guide for bearded dragons, so they do provide some fun facts. Kind of have a broken down, it's nice to see one that's not just a printout right here, so it kind of gives a nice kind of bulleted list of your different sections right here. So we do have the red flags for veterinarian consultation, we have the diet, the 70% gut load of insects as well as mealworms, 30% mixed vegetables and fruit. Also benefit from fed a commercial bearded dragon diet. Feeding, things to remember when feeding your bearded dragon: fresh, clean, chlorine-free water. Feed daily. In general, juveniles will eat more live food. Adults are more apt to eat vegetation. Oh, and this is a good point. Vegetables and fruits not eaten within 24 hours should be discarded. So it's nice, too, that they also say in here to when to actually get rid of your fruits and vegetables, that they're not going to be eating decaying fruits and vegetables. They don't recommend that for these guys. Then we have housing a bearded dragon, which I think is very important in these care guides. So appropriately sized and shaped habitat to accommodate normal behaviors and exercise. A 20 long is good beginner size for a baby bearded dragon. Upgrade the habitats as your bearded dragon goes. So they don't actually say a 40 gallon in here, which I think is great. They say as your bearded dragon grows, upgrade accordingly, which I think is totally fine. I think if you say as maybe a base, if you say 40 gallon, people think, okay, that's all I need is a 40 gallon. And then you'll have this 2-foot lizard that's sitting in a 40 gallon and it's looking crammed. It can't really move and turn as much. It's not getting the proper exercise that it needs. So I really like that in here, that it states that. I really like that it says that in here, lighting, which is huge for these guys. UVB rays with full spectrum lighting for 10 to 12 hours a day is required. And it actually also says signs of a healthy animal along with red flags for these animals. So you can kind of compare and contrast what your animal is doing. And then common health issues. And then it kind of goes over, which I like, is the health issue, the symptoms or causes, and suggested actions. So also has grooming and hygiene on here, which is kind of interesting. Let's see. Bearded dragons regularly shed their skin. Ensure humidity of the habitat is at appropriate level to allow proper shedding to the facility. Shedding, bathe in a large container that allows the bearded dragon to immerse its body, or provide a shed box, a hide box with sphagnum moss that will aid the shedding process. Then it also has the checklist on the back. So honestly, I really like this one a lot too. So I would say that in terms of how these all add up, so we have at first the Pet Supplies Plus one. After reading all these, I definitely think this one is still an A. I wouldn't give it any more, I wouldn't give it any less. It does also say on the back as I'm reading this, it says a 40 to 100 gallon requirement for these guys with a mesh top. So I think this is a pretty solid, well-rounded care guide as a whole. I think you could get away with going here and reading this and being pretty well versed in what you need to start, at least as a base model for your research. So I would definitely give the Pet Supplies Plus one an A. So we are at an A with the Pet Supplies Plus one right here. So then we have the PetSmart one right here. So I don't know. I think the PetSmart one is decent. I think it's okay. I don't think it's too bad whatsoever. I think the information here is kind of vague versus what I've seen in other ones. But I don't think it's necessarily straying the person that's trying to inquire about a bearded dragon too far off the path, and I definitely think with some more consultation and asking more questions and researching, you can get on the right path. But in terms of a care guide, I don't think it meets all the marks that I think upgraded information that we kind of want to give people over these years is at. I think I would give this one basically probably a C+. So we're going to give the Petsmart Bearded Dragon one a C+ here. Petco, I'm pretty blown away with. I thought this one was actually pretty good as well too. Pretty comparable to the Pet Supplies Plus one. A little bit of things here that I would say are a little bit questionable, so not to the Pet Supplies Plus one, but I would definitely give this one probably a B to a B+. So kudos to you, Petco. You did good. Alright, so we went over some different species of lizards. Now I want to go over a snake species, and one that's near and dear to my heart is the ball python. And fun fact, my first ball python actually came from a Petsmart. We'll go over, in honor of that, we'll kind of change things up a bit here. We will start with the Petsmart ball python care guide. So let's check that out. So the ball python care guide for Petsmart. Alright, so the ball python experience level, it says intermediate, which I would definitely agree with. I mean, though they are a beginner snake that a lot of people get into, and they're super popular in the pet trade, they're not for everyone because of their size at the end of the day. So a lot of people don't want to take care of a medium-sized python. So that's what basically a ball python would be. And ball pythons can live up to 30 years. Diet for these guys are carnivores. They feed on rodents. Personality, they are docile and naturally curious. Behavior, ball pythons are more active at night. Has that diagram as the other two did as well. How do I set up a ball python terrarium? Ball pythons should live alone in a glass terrarium at least 40 gallons with a secure lid. This one is very important, I would say. Place 2 hides in the terrarium, one on the warmer side, one on the cooler side, so that your snake can choose what temperature it wants to hide in. That's perfect. These guys love to hide, and when you give them that option, they will determine from there where they want to be. So I think that's a very important point that I used to recommend, and I still recommend to everyone when getting a ball python as a pet. Overall, not too bad. I'm pretty happy with this Petsmart one actually. So I think this went over some pretty good information here. So let's check out and see what the other ones look like. Gecko for ball pythons. So fun facts at the front, adults reach a size to 4 to 5 feet on average in length, average lifespan up to 30 years, and they are carnivores. Then we have the breakdowns right here. So a well-balanced diet, appropriate size, frozen thawed rodent, warm to the above room temperature. So then it also states in here, which I like, do not use a microwave to defrost your rodent. So I like that it says try to get your animal on frozen thawed. I'm always a huge advocate for that. And I also like that it says don't use your microwave to cook the rodent. So you don't want to cook the rodent, you want to thaw the rodent. So thawing a rodent, and then it goes over what to do to thaw a rodent, which I think is pretty nice. And then it has a bolded point, which I actually like. If feeding your snake live rodents, do not leave them unattended. Live rodents can injure the snake and sometimes be fatal. So that's a really nice point that I haven't seen yet. And that is something that's very important because obviously, as you know, ball pythons are finicky eaters and some only will take live at the end of the day. You gotta give them what you gotta give them, right? It's hard reality. But yeah, if you give them live, you don't want to walk away from them unattended because accidents can happen, and at the end of the day, your snake could be at the faulty end of a bad injury. So that is pretty cool. It also has red flags for sickness or anything like that, and normal behaviors as well too. Never try to remove eye caps by yourself. Seek vet help. So that's pretty cool too. It kind of gives you a quick update if you do see something with your snake that is out of the ordinary in terms of their shedding issues. That is something really nice that they go over. So that's pretty cool. Signs of a healthy animal as well too. I love that they actually put that in here. So that's pretty cool. And then they compare and contrast common health issues as well too, and symptoms, and suggest in terms of actions to take. And for housing, they say at least a 20-gallon long. A 40-gallon breeder tank is recommended for adult ball python. So not too bad there. And then at the back it also goes over a checklist. So overall not bad. I actually like this one a little bit better than the PetSmart one. So the Petco one definitely is taking the running so far. And I kind of like that it gives you kind of different scenarios that you could be in with your snake. So that's pretty cool. I really like this one. So now we're going to check out one that's kind of been stealing the show so far, the Pet Supplies Plus one. And like I said, it seems like care guides over the years have progressively gotten better. I don't think any of these have been absolutely terrible whatsoever compared to, if you compare these to like maybe the early 2000s, maybe even 10 years ago, honestly. these guys have definitely stepped up their game in terms of all these big chains. So overall, before I read this final one, I'm going to say I'm pretty overall happy with everything that I've seen in all these care guides. There's definitely some things that I have opinions on, but that's just me. I know some people will have opinions otherwise on these certain topics, but at the end of the day, that's just kind of how it is. This is kind of my grading scale with things, but obviously, if you want, leave your grades down below in the comments as well too. I would love to hear your grades for certain species as well. So without further ado, let's get to the Pet Supplies Plus care guide for a ball python. Average size, it says 3 to 4 feet on average, but have grown as large as 5 feet. Females will grow larger than males. I like that it kind of gives you a direction in terms of the gender of your animal. So then it also says, in addition, ball pythons are carnivorous and eat frozen thawed mice or rats, size depending on age and size of the snake. Do not feed live prey. It says that bold and underlined. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that statement because obviously, like I said, some snakes will only take live, and if you can't get them on anything and you've been trying and trying and trying, normally on average you can get them on live. It's very frustrating. It's a process. These guys are very stingy for sure. I did a whole video on it, but just kind of vaguely putting out that do not feed live prey. I think that could kind of go to some people's head where they're stressed out that their snake isn't eating. They can't do anything because they read that and they're like, oh my gosh, I don't want to feed these guys live because it says don't feed them live. It's very vague. I like how Petco kind of went over and said, like, if you do feed live, don't leave them unattended. That's probably a better statement than saying do not feed live. And another thing that I find interesting with that is a lot of Pet Supplies Pluses, I remember, used to sell live feeders. So it's very interesting that they don't say to feed live prey, but yet they at least used to sell live prey for their ball pythons. So kind of an interesting switch up right there that I am noticing. Now, something I haven't seen in the other care guides that this goes over is soaking. So snakes benefit from a good deep water soak at least once a week. Fill a container with deep water, enough water so the entire snake's body can be submerged underwater, but the snake's head can come out and be out of the water. The water should be nice and warm, about 70 to 80 degrees. Soak your snake for about 30 minutes at a time. Alright, so now it's time to grade these guys for the final one. So I think we're going to start with the Petsmart one here. I definitely think this one definitely did well this time around. I think that the Petsmart one definitely got a B to a B plus for sure. I definitely think that there is some good information told throughout this care guide here to help you out with your baby ball python or your adult ball python. So that is what I think of the Petsmart one, and then I want to go to the Petco one. Petco, man, I think this one is actually pretty darn good. I think this one definitely goes over everything that you would basically need and then some in terms of just starting out for yours, in terms of a clean slate of information for starting your research for ball pythons. I definitely give this one probably a B plus to an A minus. So definitely really like this one, and this one is tough. I think the big thing here in terms of if we're going off of species is talking about these guys being picky eaters. I really like the Petco one because it kind of goes a little bit more in depth with this one. This kind of throws me for a loop because it straight up says do not feed live. That kind of is a very bold, stricken statement that is very weird, but it does also have some very cool information in here too that is different from the feeding regimens of things that just kind of goes over ball pythons in general. But the feeding situation is something so common with these guys that I'm constantly getting messages saying, what's going on? My ball python isn't eating, and people don't realize that these guys go on hunger strikes. They require certain prey, that maybe they're just being picky and they want live versus frozen, or they just aren't adapted to the frozen thawed yet and they really need live to get themselves going more. And saying blanketly in here that do not feed live and not explaining more about that, I'm not too fond of that. So I would probably say that that kind of strikes me down a letter grade with this one. Almost was a perfect one here, but I would definitely say that this one is a B in terms of the grading here. So ball pythons for Pet Supplies, I'm sorry. If you said a little bit more with the feeding thing, I think that's a crucial part, but I definitely would give this one a B regardless because it definitely has chock full of information here. But yeah, that is the final grade I would give for the ball python care guides. Alright, so those are the care guides that I'm going to share today. What do you guys think of this type of video? I definitely enjoyed it doing this myself. I thought this was definitely a cool change up from the norm. If you guys like this kind of video, definitely leave it down in the comments. Let me know your letter grades too. If you guys have different ones than me and different opinions on the letter grade system that I gave, let me know down below. I would love to hear your guys' opinions. If you guys work for these companies as well too, I would love to hear your guys' comments about that, as well as any stories that you want to share. I'm all ears. I love to hear those things. Working in these big chains myself, it's always cool thinking
thinking back and seeing how information has changed. I definitely think the care guides have come a long way, like I said, from the early 2000s, 90s to the 2010s. I think we've definitely come a long way since those care guides. I think the information has improved. It's not been copy and paste from the past. They've definitely upped the ante on these and provided some quality information to the average person that has not learned anything, and they're not in the reptile fringe, as people would say, and they're just starting off with reptiles. So I think the information is definitely more in abundance in these care guides, which is great if you're just starting off and you're picking up a pamphlet before you even talk to an employee, or after you talk to an employee and you pick up a pamphlet. I think these are great things to kind of get you on the right path of research. So it's definitely a foundation, and you definitely want to continue on your research. I think going into a store, kind of getting an idea of what you're wanting, and then going back home is definitely the better move than impulsively getting something at the store the same day. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you guys so much for tuning in today. I really enjoyed this video. I hope you guys did too. If you guys could do me a few favors, definitely check me out on my social media. I would greatly appreciate it. I've been posting a whole bunch of fun different content there. I've been starting posting on TikTok as well too, so definitely check me out, and NGP Exotics there. Like always, I've been posting some really cool things throughout my social media, so like I said, check me out. It's been a lot of fun on social media. I'm trying to consistently post there a lot more than I used to, so we're gonna have some fun more on social media. But regardless, thank you guys so much for joining me here today. It really means the world to me. If you guys could do me a couple favors, if you could like the video and subscribe to the channel, I would greatly appreciate it, as well as hit that notification bell so you know when I upload. Thank you guys again for watching, and until next time, we will see you guys soon.